Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela Gandhi, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome back to this week's episode of the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I am so excited that you are here, and I'm even more excited to present to you a total rock star attorney, my friend Marilyn Chinitz, who is a partner at Blank Rome with 40 years of experience in literally every facet of family law, divorce law. She's worked with some biggies. I'm going to let her tell you about that. Marilyn, welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast.
Thank you,
I'm so glad you're here.
God, when I heard that number of 40, it's like, wow, she's old.
You're not old. Oh my gosh. For those of you that are listening, go back and look at the reels, look at the YouTube video. This woman is drop dead gorgeous. When we logged on, I said, my gosh, Marilyn, what are you doing to anti-age? So,
you're so
yeah,
sweet.
don't listen to a word she says. So
listen, with all those years, I think I've learned quite a bit. And that's what created my practice. That's what created the longevity I have with my clients. And it's been a wonderful journey, 41 years. It's been terrific, and I hope I can do a lot more.
Oh, absolutely. And tell us, just, feel free to drop a few names that the listeners because you are a trusted family member to so many people.
Without a doubt. I think I'm really, really blessed because I love what I do. And I didn't start out doing matrimonial law. I started out as a corporate litigator and then was asked by one of the partners to quietly do his divorce. And in those days, it was fault grounds. And that means that you had to prove adultery or abandonment or neglect or cruel and inhuman treatment. So you got all the salacious details of someone's life, coupled with information concerning finances and assets and valuations. I jumped into it and I ended up loving it. And so I then asked the law firm where I was at, could we do matrimonial law? And they kind of hemmed and hawed, and they met with the partner board, and ultimately they said, no, it's like ambulance chasing, we won't do that. Unfortunately for them, they imploded. I'm still here, and then I decided switching over to matrimonial law was right up my alley. So I've built a practice over the years, and fortunately have met some extraordinary people. I can mention some names because they've been in the public eye. So I represented Tom Cruise in his divorce. And that was a very interesting divorce because literally we worked round the clock for 7 days and ultimately settled the case.
In 7 days?
In 7 days. But literally 24/7. Everything else was kind of put aside because we had to get this case resolved, and we did. And Tom Cruise had a wonderful attorney, Bert Fields, in LA, who flew in and helped us. Unfortunately, he passed away. But that was quite an extraordinary experience. He was one really cool guy and a very appreciative human being. So, yeah, I really enjoyed working with him. One thing that was really interesting, and I'll share it, he said to me, I want to be able to speak to my daughter every single day for no less than 45 minutes. And I said, what are you going to talk to a little 6-year-old about for 45 minutes? And he said, well, no matter where I am in the world, I'm going to shut down the set and I'm going to call her, and I expect for you to make sure that I have that 45 minutes. And we did. And she took his call every day.
Every day.
I said to him, what is the secret? How did you get her? And he said, I dummied down the movie that I was working on, and I left her at a cliffhanger so that she'd want to talk to me the next day and find out what the story was. I thought that was brilliant.
That is really smart. I wish I was a producer, then I could get my teams to talk to me every day.
I thought that was so clever. And then the most wonderful human being that I represented is Michael Douglas. I represented Michael in connection with the lawsuit that Deandra brought to get a second bite at the apple when Michael came out with Wall Street 2. That was an asset that was distributed in their divorce, but she did not have any kind of residual rights. So we litigated that and got that kicked out of New York, which was great.
Wow.
Wendy Williams, who was such a, I don't want to say was, but she's a fabulous, talented talk host who really built a tremendous career and sadly got sick. And we don't see her on the show anymore. But what a dynamo. Very, very dynamic. So I've been blessed with other wonderful celebrities, wonderful people who may not be celebrities. I've represented large hedge fund managers, private equity, regular spectacular women who've devoted themselves to the marriage and really focused in on their children, intelligent, brilliant women. And so I've had a great array of very interesting people. And so I love what I do because matrimonial is not just about dividing assets and separating people and the psychology. It also involves trust and estate. You have to have a really strong tax background, and valuing different assets are so interesting. Understand how do you value a hedge fund, a limited partner, a business, a law practice. So in those years, I've been able to accumulate, number one, a great group of professionals, therapists, private investigators, forensic accountants. And so with all that wealth, what I love now is to share that wealth. And that is the sustaining factor in my practice, I think.
That's why you have this glow. You love what you do. And there's no glow like that.
I do. I honestly, I married 38 years, believe it or not. I wake up happy every day. And I feel very blessed every day because I think if everybody has their health, their kids are healthy, you've got it all. There's nothing you can't accomplish. And so with that mentality, I turn the faucet on every day.
Right. And just help people get to the next best chapter of their lives.
Yeah. And there are a lot of good chapters out there. And I see it every day. You know, Bella, I do a lunch, and I've invited you. Every March or April, you are coming. And it's 60 women. And they're former clients, they're current clients, they're plastic surgeons, they're business people, president of Zimmerman, artists. I mean, such a great collection. And they get there at like 12:30, they leave at like 5:30, and they all have the best time meeting each other. Women are very, very generous, I find. Not always. Sometimes professional women are not always so generous. But for the most part, women want to share, all their knowledge, and they want to share their advice. And I think it's a great thing. So that platform is so much fun because that's exactly what we do. And we celebrate. We have fun.
Well, I'm coming. You send me the date. It's going to be on my calendar.
Definitely.
And I will be there until I will be the one to shut the lights off in that.
You and me both. We'll do it together.
All right, girl, we'll be each other's dates. Well, we were talking a little bit before we turned the record button on about all these fantastic women, you've represented many of them, right? And why there's so many women that just, kind of resign themselves to saying, I don't think there's anybody out there for me. Like, what do you see on that side of the spectrum?
Well, it's very, very interesting. I hate to put people in categories, but women who have had wealth around them are very on guard and very careful about bringing a partner into their life for fear that they're being used. That person is there just for their financial circumstances. That's not often the case at all. And so those women who I've counseled end up passing potentially some really good people that may not be interested in materialistic, but they have a love of culture, they have a love of art, they have a love of traveling. And you're measuring your bank account thinking that they're measuring your bank account, and they're not. And so you don't let those opportunities go by because, as we get older, we really refine the important things in our life, right? Friendship is really important. Sex may be super important. Health is number one.
Yeah.
And as we get older, we should not just dismiss people because they don't have a tremendous amount of money, but they may have a tremendous amount of wealth in other areas. And so I like when women focus in on that. And I'm beginning to see more and more of that, which I think is terrific.
I see that all the time. I mean, we get women that, let's just say, have high net worth for whatever reason, right? And they'll come to us saying, I don't want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a purse. And
I've heard that. Yep.
And, and when men will come to us, we coach men and women and say, well, and they have net worth and, well, I don't want any gold diggers. I said, but if you're leading with your wealth.
Right. Exactly.
That's what's going to happen. And so what I can tell you is if you're listening to this, you don't have to lead with your wealth. Good people that want to love you and adore you, and you'll do the same back to them, they're not looking at your balance sheet compared to their balance sheet, right? They're not keeping score. Marilyn, my advice to my clients, male or female, right? This person will never match you dollar per dollar. Do they really need to? As long as they can pay their own way, what more do you want?
And also, Bella, you're talking to a matrimonial lawyer. There are so many ways to protect your wealth.
Yes.
And so you could have a prenuptial agreement. You can set up trusts. There are many ways that shield your wealth if that's what your concern is, that you're going to be with somebody just because you're going to take care of them financially. It doesn't have to be that way. And so there are many, many, ways that we protect our wealth, and there's nothing wrong with it. The law actually provides for that. So that if you're coming into a second marriage, you have assets that you acquired long before that marriage. You're entitled to protect it. The law protects it. So having a prenup is not an offensive thing. And then the other interesting thing is someone I know was married for 30 years. Both of them are professional, highly successful. And the husband had decided that he was not happy and he wanted to exit the marriage. And he did it in a very respectful way. They separated, they got divorced, they divided their assets. And lo and behold, 4 months later, the former wife, started dating very quickly and she just got engaged. And I thought that was extraordinary.
Beautiful.
Right? So she's starting a whole new life, and it didn't negate the value of the life that she had with her husband and 3 children. It just gave her a new platform, very different from her husband, that opens up other doors. And no one can sit judgment, right?
No.
No one has a right to sit judgment. if I got text messages, wow, can you believe that she's engaged? And I said, well, why not just congratulate her? I think that's fantastic. Oh, I hope she knows what she's doing. She's an adult. She's a professional. She found somebody happy, so let's be happy for her. And that's a wonderful thing. So some people are ready to take the plunge immediately. It wouldn't be my first choice, because I think when you end a marriage, it's an opportunity at exploring so many new things, new people.
Yeah. And yourself.
And yourself. Because you forget yourself, right? You're always at the bottom of the stick there. You forget yourself. Some people that I know, they didn't have a chance to travel. They didn't have a chance to find an art class or go to the museum. And all of a sudden, life is opening up. And you know what? They're taking an art class now. They just met somebody who's interesting, and, they're now dating. I think every place is an opportunity. If you have the mentality, if you come in with a bag, all your baggage and your luggage and your insecurities, it's going to be challenging. But if you kind of free it, and I know your platform is a great platform to help people, if you free yourself up and just enjoy the moment, the experience, you just don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a very interesting example, and I just took...
Oh, I can't wait to hear.
All right. So last night, I went to this beautiful, I mentioned it to you, it was a gala, the Angel Ball Gala. And I took one of my clients, and her divorce was 2 months ago. And I said, okay, we can't be late because my client is being honored and I want to go to the cocktail party. So she picked me up, and we got there about 10 minutes early. And it was cold in New York last night. I had a jacket, she didn't. Behind us was this gentleman, and he said, it's cold. And I said, yes, it's very cold. My friend is freezing. And he said, well, let me take off my coat and give it to her. And she said, no, that's okay. And I said, no, could you give her your coat?
Yeah, take it.
He put it on her, and we struck up this fantastic conversation. And it led to, what he does, and he invited us to his studio at another time. And it created a very lovely introduction and maybe a friendship, but certainly something that was interesting enough to continue a dialogue. So I'm a believer that if you're open, you can have a dialogue. And there are people out there that I think are very interesting. May not be the person that you end up with, but you can have, a lot of new people in your life if you let yourself open to it. If you open yourself up.
You're right. And it's kind of this, having this yes mentality, right? And it's the fact that most people are good people. And if you look at the world from that lens, I'm not saying be Pollyanna, but yeah, if somebody strikes up a conversation with you and you're cold and he offers his coat, take the coat. It's not an engagement ring. It's a coat. Somebody's trying to be nice to you, and you accept that gesture, and it forms a little bond between the two of you, right? People like to help, right? We all want to help.
1,000%.
Makes us feel so good.
Yeah.
And you never know. I tell my clients, say yes to everything good that comes your way, because you never know. Even if you go have coffee with that person, they may turn into a friend that you can have Sunday brunch with, and they may end up fixing you up with
absolutely
in your pot.
1,000%.
So
1,000%.
You never know when that person's going to come along. But if it's what I would encourage you to do, my dear listener, is ask yourself, am I a yes person? Do I look at everything in front of me with hope and with opportunity, versus do I look at it with dread and disdain and negativity and wondering how I'm going to get screwed, or if
And you're the only person that can answer that question. But if you feel like, yeah, I could stand a little bit of your psychotic optimism, Bella, I'm spraying it to you across the speakers here. So look at people as good people and approach the world in that way, because you know what? It just is a hell of a lot more fun.
It is. And there are safe places to meet people, right? So, if you're a theater person, if you like going to the museums, there are courses, there are programs. And, I love Sotheby's in New York, because you can walk around and look at all the beautiful art, and then they have a little cafe. And people sit at the cafe and they sit by themselves. And, I know once I was there and somebody said, is anybody sitting there? And I said, no. And it wasn't a come on. It was just a nice person striking up a conversation. And it ended up that we knew people in common. But that's how your world grows. And I think the whole point of this is, how do you let your world grow? As opposed to closing the walls, how do you expand them? How do you take down the walls so that you have opportunities to meet people wherever you go? And I think there are so many opportunities, but it's in your control. It's in your control.
That's right. And it's an easy thing to change, ladies and gentlemen. Right?
It is. And, there are some, I always say, I love this, beautiful women out there, 6 spectacular models who are so insecure about the way they look. And then there are other women who I think are beautiful, but they're not like...
They're normal beautiful.
They're normal. But when you get to know them, and it's the same for a man, when you get to know them, you see all of their beauty come out in a different way. And so you only get that message. 2 points on that. Number one, insecurity is the worst thing that you can have, and it takes a lot of work to break. We all have insecurity. It all comes from our parents. It comes from our background. But breaking that away is so critically important, I think. And then thinking that 99% of the population is insecure, so I got to walk into that room like a powerhouse, because then people are going to look at you and feel it. They feel the energy that you pass on. They also feel the negativity.
You want to hear a mantra that I learned in my 20s that has never left me?
Yeah.
I was thrust into leadership at a very young age in a family business, and was then dealing with clients globally. And I learned something, and I teach this to everybody that will listen: expect acceptance.
Was a very good one. That's great.
Every time you walk into a door, you tell yourself, I belong in this room.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it flipped.
Even if you don't really believe it?
Yes. You just say, I belong here. Expect acceptance. Because as soon as you do that, you become a different version of you. We're all like diamonds, right? We have different facets. So the facet that you want to spin face forward is, I belong here just like you do, and I know you're going to accept me because I accept you. And when you come in with that vibe, with that je ne sais quoi, you become magnetic.
Yeah,
you
without a doubt.
Baggage of insecurity.
Yep. And then you're the equal, and maybe you're a little beyond the equal, an eclipse, but that's exactly right. I always had this image I try to explain to my kids. My daughter is a lawyer. My son is at Duke Business School. And they said, Mom, I don't know how you keep going. You work like a dog all day, 7 days a week. Then you go out at night and I said, I feel like, that little rag doll that you turn the doll and she goes up, right? Stands straight up and she's full speed ahead. And then she comes home, and then she goes back down. And I said, but if you can keep getting up every day and doing that, you are ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game. And so it's not that the body doesn't ache, the mind doesn't ache, the stresses are not there. It's that you've cleared the path and said, this is where I have to go, and you go. And you just don't have a choice. And it's as simple as that. I'm not very sympathetic when I can. And it just, yeah, you can. And we're gonna, we'll do it together. And I see it with my associates. How do you get out there and market? How do you bring in business? Come on, let's go. And we'll go, and we'll do it naturally, because there's no formula per se. It's all within your body. It's all within your head and your heart. And so you look to people who can give you that guidance, because a lot of people really don't have it. They don't have the mentorship. They don't have the guidance. They may not have the parents. They may not have the best friend. So you look to professionals who can help you. And those are gems. Those are resources. And you take, even if you take just a little of that advice and incorporate it into your world, it's a wealth of information.
Game changing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely game changing.
And then another tip I'm going to give, which I found through my life has been very, very helpful. Are we on radio only?
No, we're on video too.
Okay. I'm going to show you a book. This is every day. Every single day, I write down things I have to do, take care of. Because when we're busy in our life, we have so many things, and there are things, you too, there you go. Bella, how did I know you were going to have the same book?
And it's sitting right here.
Right here.
In my
Exactly.
Right.
That's right.
Always the book. Always
What's that great satisfaction of crossing off something that we accomplished? And you don't have to have your long list. You can have 5 things for the week that you want to accomplish. Write them down. And by Sunday night, I hope that you've crossed off those 5 things. And to me, that's also a great motivator.
You know, in 2024, I have started to make 2 lists. I was a big 1 list, vomit everything on 1 piece of paper, have it all down. Sometimes I'd circle the priority things. Now I do 2 things, right? There's tasky things that we just have to do that you're like, but they take up a lot of our day.
Yeah.
But I make sure that every day I write down 3 to 5 things that will make me proud to have done.
So tell me give me a sense of what they may be.
So let me flip back here. I have one called intentions, and this was from yesterday. You can see the list didn't all get scratched out here.
It will. Yep. By Sunday, it will.
I'll tell you what. It said, look for what's going right. This is a new mantra. I heard somebody talking about this last month. Every time you walk through a doorway, it's a prompt for you. And think about it, in your own house, there's many doorways. You stop and you go, what's going right? Mm-hmm. And instead of waiting until the end of the day to write that gratitude list, have you paused and said to yourself 3 to 4 times in a day, what's going right? It has been game changing. I'm a pretty positive person anyway, but our brains are wired to have a negativity bias, right? It's survival. Yeah. We want to look for what's wrong so we don't get eaten by the tiger or bitten by the rattlesnake. And instead, when you just stop and say, what's going right? Oh my God, 11 things come to mind immediately about what's going right. And it
makes you feel good.
In that zone of positivity. And the reason, for those of you watching, it's not scratched out is because you don't do it one time. I just want it front and center on the things that are going to make me proud all the time. Like, did it help me? Gosh, it's helping me so much to look.
That's great. I've got to implement that. I think about, who can I help today?
I love that.
Besides my clients. So I am the go-to person when somebody needs something. And that's a great role that I was able to achieve. Whether it's medical advice, do you know a good doctor? Do you know a good coach? and to provide that information. Because if you can become a resource for people, you feel good. And there is science to this. When you do an act of kindness, you feel good about yourself.
Yes.
There is a scientific basis in your body, whatever it is that your body produces, that when you do something nice for somebody, it makes you feel good. And it could be the simplest thing. Ed, who runs the lobby downstairs in our big Time Inc. building, came over to me one day. He said, I love your attitude. Tell me your name. And I told him. And he told me his name. And every morning, as soon as I walk in, hi, Marilyn. Ed, how are you? How's your family? You can't imagine how you turn somebody's life on just by simple things, because people feel like they've been neglected and ignored by the public. And you let them know that they're important. Takes so little, but it's very, very nice. And it gets commented by other people that come in the lobby. That was really nice. I didn't know his name. I see him every day. Again,
and
it's ways
forward.
You do. And it's ways to make life, I think, so much nicer, because we do have so many stressors out there that if you can focus in on what I can be proud of and what my intention is, you put out all that negativity and you're focusing in on the good stuff. And that's the driver. That's when you're at the helm of the ship.
It's so true. And I think just when you switch your energy into that, I have a friend who did an exercise, and she said, when you walk through an airport or you're walking down the street, you're like, oh, look at that person. Oh, that guy needs to cut his beard off, or whatever that negative Nancy that lives in our brains. And she said, I'm going to do this experiment, and I'm going to, every person that I see, just silently, I'm going to tell myself a good story about that person. So instead of, the guy with the Harley Davidson long beard, she says, you know what? I bet he is the fun uncle. And
she's got to be very perceptive. That's a very good way, because I get that.
Yes. And she started to notice how much, even because she was just doing these things in her mind, that people started. She's like, I would go into restaurants and I would think to myself, I bet you that waitress is the kindest grandmother and keeps like two twins on her knees at all times. Suddenly she says, you know what? The waitress just said, you know what? You look like a nice person. Your check is on me. And so she wasn't even saying because she was creating these.
She gave the vibe.
But the energy, just the sheer energy of telling yourself a good story about another human changes the way you are perceived by others. So try to do this. And I will tell you what, it's so much more fun, because you'll find your brain giving you a little dopamine squeeze when you say, I bet you that guy is the fun uncle. Because when you think about the fun uncle, who doesn't like the fun uncle, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting that she picked up the vibe. So your friend who was, clearly giving off some message, and it was received. And that's the whole point about dating too. When you date, or when you are in a group with people, you project certain things, and that's what makes you interesting, attractive, somebody to talk to. And again, it's all within your control. And those are the things that we learn every day. We get so busy in life, we're moving so quickly. And sometimes you just got to take a pause and think about things. And when you do, and change, maybe pivot just a little, then a whole bunch of new stuff happens. That's why I think waking up every day is such a privilege. I mean, the greatest blessing at night is that you wake up in the morning. So what are you going to make out of that day, right? You got that blessing. What are you going to make out of that day? You got to be something good.
I love that. I have a question, just because we're like in this mode of positivity, and you're right. And you're saying that just sparked a story of a woman that I worked with, that my team worked with a couple of years ago, that came to us. She was 71 when she signed on with us. And she's like, "You're my last hope." And I'm like, "We're not your last hope." And she said, "And by the way, I'm not a size 2. I'm curvy. And who's going to love me? I'm old and I'm heavy." Absolute nonsense. The most beautiful spirit inside and out. And she met this amazing guy online, and we coached her, and he was the perfect lid to her pot. Unexpected package. When you're looking for the things that matter, he's completely an unexpected package. And they're having what's called a commitment ceremony. My question, is that a thing legally, or is that just like...
So that's interesting that you say, is that a thing legally? Tomorrow I'm speaking with 2 judges about whether or not, are you really married? So there are cases where you may have had the ceremony, but you have to have somebody officiate the ceremony. And then you did not send in your marriage certificate. It was never sent in. So are you legally married? And so there are a whole slew of cases now. But if you have a commitment ceremony, it's not a wedding ceremony.
It's not a marriage, right?
It's not a marriage. It's I'm committing myself to you, and I ask that you do the same. But you don't have the marriage certificate. You do not have, if you do not have somebody officiating that ceremony, then it's not a marriage. And you're not thinking that you're married. You're calling it a commitment. You're not calling it, "I'm married and we are committed." So I think those ceremonies are beautiful. I actually, my husband said, and God willing, we're healthy and okay, 40 years, in 2 years, we're going to do a beautiful ceremony. Which I think is very, very sweet. But people like to restate their vows, or they want to say, "I'm committed to you," but it's not legally binding. I said blinding. It's not legally binding. But it's important that people know that they're committed. And you know, I find that couples who have been together in Sweden, they have a thing called samba, where you're not married, but you've been together. You hold yourself out as husband and wife. You have children together, but you're not legally married. However, you do have the rights as a married person.
As a spouse.
As a spouse. In New York, we do not recognize common law marriage. So you could be living together with somebody, holding yourself out as husband and wife, but you can be together for 20, 30 years, and you have no legal rights whatsoever, not to property, not to support, etc. But if you move to another state that recognizes common law, and you've lived there, and you're a common law couple there, and you come to New York, then you are married. Then New York will recognize that.
So this is just me conjecturing here. If with all of the protections that exist, you can have prenups, you can have postnups, you can have all of these things. And if somebody wants to be together and they have a commitment ceremony, what is the fear of marriage? Is it finances? Is it like, I'm just curious from an attorney's perspective, like what's the there?
So I think I previously mentioned to you, I have set up 3 couples, 2 of whom got married, and one, they met, they're both in their 60s. They have children from their prior marriages. They don't want to get married. They live together. They don't want the obligation of I don't want to say obligation. They don't want the financial responsibility of estate issues And so in the case, I'm very I met the husband, the boyfriend has been a friend of mine for 40 years. And the woman was a client of mine, and I introduced them. And they have the most loving, wonderful relationship. But he has 3 kids from his marriage, and he has grandchildren. And no doubt he will be extremely generous. But it was important for him to keep everything separate.
Yeah.
And they will probably stay together until their last breath. I mean, they are so in love. And because they have that love and commitment, she'll be protected, no question. But he did not want that legal element to it, and explained to his children and so forth. And then they would have a difficult time taking her in as a stepmother. It's complicated. So it's a beautiful relationship that the kids love and respect, and they're very happy. So they don't need to get married in that situation.
That's great. And they both were fine with it.
Both were fine with it. I'm doing a prenup for a couple now. He's 84 years old and she's 66. And they do want to get married. And so we're working on a prenup. Different strokes for different folks. And so sometimes people feel like, I want to be married. I want that glue. More than just a commitment. I want to know that person is my spouse. And that psychologically is meaningful to them.
Totally.
So it varies.
That's interesting. I was wondering, like, I hear more and more about commitment ceremonies. I'm like, what does it mean? Legally, it doesn't mean anything.
It's a good party.
It's a good party. You get a great ring. Maybe you exchange rings. You live together.
Exactly.
Whatever it means.
And if you later get married, that ring is your separate property, by the way. Never a marital asset.
Oh my gosh. Everybody needs Marilyn in their speed dial to ask.
How I start thinking, oh my gosh, I can't help myself.
Oh my gosh. Well, are there any last things that you want to impart to our dear listener with your wealth of experience with, humans for the last, 40 years?
I think making connections every single day is that beautiful string. And you don't want to break that chain. If you just have one link to the chain, you're so denying yourself all these wonderful things. So if you can imagine every day, I'm going to create another link. Think about what that link is going to be. It could be a connection to an old friend. It could be a connection to a neighbor. Whatever that link is, create a link. And then I think you've adorned yourself with the most beautiful jewelry imaginable. I think life is so fantastic if you take advantage of it. I mean, when I said to you I'm an optimist, I am. I want to continue waking up every day happy and going to bed feeling I did the best I could. May not be perfect, but that's okay. I paid my taxes and I did the best I could.
Right. And who can I help today? I love that about you.
Yeah. And it could be anybody in your nuclear, circle. It could be beyond that. I'm blessed I have 2 adorable little grandchildren. So if I can help my daughter who works nonstop to have a few hours to take a break, I'm going to take those little cuties. And so it could be somebody close to you and it could be somebody far.
Is she a matrimonial lawyer just like Mama?
No, she wanted to. When she graduated law school, she said, I want to do matrimonial. Can I come work with you? And I said, no, absolutely not. And she said, why? And I said, because number one, if you're going to learn, I'm not going to coddle you. You've got to learn. So if you screw up, you've got to own up. And so she went to work for a matrimonial firm. She loved the people. She hated matrimonial. Wow. And she came back to me and she said, I don't know, Mom, you made it look so glamorous. It's miserable. The lawyers yell at you. The judges yell at you. The clients yell at you. It's horrible. So she ended up leaving matrimonial, and then she became, she was Ellen DeGeneres' lawyer doing her branding and licensing and So she's now created and built her own firm with another woman and 2 other partners. And they do all of this branding, licensing, and IP work. And I'm so, so proud of her.
You must be just.
I really am really proud of her that she decided to just go out on her own and do it. And there was a time a month ago, she said, "Oh, Mom, I have a lot of new clients, but I need a flurry." And I said, "It will come." She said, "Should I go in-house?" And I said, "No, stick where you are and just keep on doing it." So I have no doubt she's going to be a great success. And I'm really, really proud of her. Yeah.
Okay. So sharing here, my daughter was between her sophomore and junior year in college, and she's a finance major. She worked at a matrimonial law firm this summer. They hired her instead of a law clerk. She was because of her finance background. It was a tiny woman-owned firm, and she went in for an interview, and they said, "You understand finances?" She says,
"Oh, they must have loved it."
And this woman and her partner are like, "Most attorneys don't understand finance, and in matrimonial law, it's all finance." She says, "Well, yeah, I'm going to be a finance major. Can you do Excel?" She said, "I've taken 3 Excel classes. Can you do PowerPoint?" And my daughter wrote a book. And they said, "Could you write introductions for the case?"
She wrote a book at how old is she?
Yeah, in high school. She's 20 now. She wrote it when she was 16. So she's
unbelievable.
A novelist out of her head, but she doesn't want to be a writer because she's like, if that was my job, I would hate it. So she worked at a matrimonial law firm, and I will tell you what, not only did she love the work, now for the first time, she's going to study for the LSAT. So
fantastic. So where does she live?
When she's in school, she lives with me in Chicago, but she's at school at Indiana and their business at Kelley Business School.
You've got to get her to call me or come meet me.
I will bring her to New York. And
absolutely.
She loved it. And I had lunch with her, the partner that she worked for, the owner of the firm. And they said she came up with these insights, and I was so proud of her. So I can only imagine for you having your daughter start her own firm, to have my daughter working at a firm and with a woman who, has her own little firm. And it was just,
but look how she did something out of her comfort zone that she knew had nothing to do with what she was doing. And now she fell in love with possibly the idea of going to law school. That's the whole point, right? You've got to get out of your comfort zone, try something, because you never know what door is going to open up. And I think that's a perfect example. She should definitely come meet me. I would love to meet her.
Oh, that's
great. Well, that's what I said to you before. It's not just about dividing assets and support and things like that, and custody, all very important, but it's about understanding tax issues, finances, valuation issues, and that's really right up her alley.
You need a good stomach to do your work. You are doing God's work, and I know that because I lived with it for 3 months. So
it's not for the faint and weak. That's for sure.
No, Marilyn, you are the most delightful human being.
Bella, I love meeting you, and I love what you're doing with all the wonderful people and clients that you work with, because it's such an incredible service. And, there are not many people who have that experience and knowledge and compassion, and that's what you have. So you are a very unique resource.
Well, and you are a unique unicorn in your world.
Thank you. I'm so glad our paths crossed. I really am.
So am I. Well, Smart Daters, if you're not feeling positive and elevated and like you're going to say yes, and you're going to create good stories about people, and you're going to look for the connections and look for what's good, I don't know what the heck's going to inspire you, because I feel like I'm walking 6 inches off the ground right now. So if you loved this episode with Marilyn, rate it 5 stars. Write us a love note. I read every single one. Share it with everyone you know, that there is life after divorce, and it can be more beautiful than your life has ever been.
That's great. Absolutely. Bela, thank you.
Thank you. And smart daters, until our next episode, I bid you a week full of love and optimism.
And intention.
And intention. Hell yes. Thanks again, Marilyn.
Thank you.